month ago we covered glutes. Now the thing is, with any muscle group, we always kind of have to cover it over 2 months' time because every muscle group is really complex, right? I'm going to review real briefly kind of what we talked about on last time's Muscle PhD Academy, and then this week's Muscle PhD Academy is also glutes, but it's all stuff we didn't cover last time. So if you remember, basically, again, real quick, gluteus maximus, like largest muscle in our body, basically originates all along the hip and inserts on the upper leg called the femur, right? If you look at that, basically the glutes are going to have kind of 3 major actions. One's going to be extension, which means like if I stand up and I do maybe like a cable kickback, that's going to be an extension. So you have basically, you can divide the glutes into 2 glutes. You have the upper glutes and you have the lower glutes. Lower glutes are going to be mainly extensors. They'll extend the leg back. I'm trying to hit the upper glutes. That's going to be more adduction. So if I'm like standing up, that's me moving my arm, you know, out to the side. That's what I would do with my leg, and that's going to be more upper glutes. So if I'm like doing lateral band walks or side lunges, that's going to be the upper glutes. The upper glutes also externally rotate the feet, basically, right, or the lower leg. So basically, if I'm externally pointing my toes out, that's going to work the upper glutes.
You want a model?
Should I, yeah.
Do you want like Paul to jump up?
Oh, yeah. Well, you could, yeah. Yeah, Andy can model this stuff.
If you want, I can do it.
Yeah. So that's kind of what the glutes do. Remember that. Remember, glutes are about 50-50, 50% fast, 50% slow twitch fiber, and then that means, and also the way they're anatomically built or designed, you can do high fast speed movements or slower movements, higher reps or lower reps. You want a mixture of all of those. Now, last time we talked about the best exercises are more like glute bridges, stuff like that, hip extensions, hyperextensions, reverse hyperextensions. Those work, and then adductor machine, lateral band walks. Those are directly working the glutes. So just remember that, okay? So again, like you know, hip extensions, like with a cable backward. You know, Brett Contreras' favorite exercise. What's his favorite exercise?
Glute bridges.
Glute bridges. With the bar. You know, and again, like abductor machine or lateral band walks. What we're going to talk about this week is like, what about those exercises that don't directly target the glutes, like squats, for example, and lunges, for example, okay? Last time we said those weren't the best exercise for glutes, but they always form the cornerstone. If you think about like squats and lunges, always form a lot of the cornerstone for glute type activities, right? But the thing is, like I pointed out, they're not the best exercises for glutes. They're more mainly targeting the quads. But let me put it into perspective. When you talk about muscle growth, there's a lot of ways that muscles grow. One way that muscles grow, so if we're going kind of based on that parameter, how do you maximize glute activation during a lunge? A couple things. There's several different variations of a lunge, but the first thing out of all those variations seems that like forward lunges, like moving from a forward, either going forward or back, typically like forward or back, is going to be probably the most glute activation, but longer steps. So that was one of the things that we're actually, have we posted that yet?
The one on steps? Yep, yesterday.
Okay, yesterday we posted that. So longer steps are actually going to cause more muscle activation when you're doing lunges. Why? Because you've put the muscle more on stretch, and what that does is causes more muscle damage. And so the glutes are going to grow via the damage mechanism, the mechanical stimuli, when you do like a longer type of activity. Next thing that we actually talked about on the glutes, which was actually pretty cool, was like, if you're doing squats, how do I maximally activate my glutes if I'm doing squats? Well, how many different variations of squats there are. One thing you can do is, first off, is where you're going. So if I'm doing squats, one thing I could do is I could go down and up, down and up. Another thing I could actually do is sit back and kind of thrust forward, right? Sit back and thrust forward. So if I'm going down and up, it becomes more of a quad dominant exercise. Think about this, like if I'm gonna sit down, right? Think about sitting in a chair. What do? Right? I don't like just sit down in a chair. Like I'm not just going like this. Usually if I'm sitting in a chair, I'm actually sitting back, right? And that is what for glutes, basically what you're thinking about for glutes, you want to sit back. So studies show when you're sitting back and then popping forward, like from your hips, not coming up, like literally like thrusting forward, almost like a glute bridge or a hip thrust. When you're coming back, you're essentially doing a hip thrust, just horizontally, as opposed to like vertically when you're laying on the ground. You want to think the same concept. When you do that, much higher muscle activation. So sit back, thrust forward, imagine you're doing a hip thrust. And that's what studies show you. So massive differences in muscle activation. Next thing that we talked about is basically like the width. Oh, actually, the basically rotation. Some guys will, for example, do squats with their feet pointed forward. If you externally rotate on a squat, you activate the upper glutes more. Remember, the upper glutes are external rotators. I mean, they turn the toes out. So basically, if I'm doing squats, I'm going to sit back. I'm going to thrust forward like a hip thrust. I'm actually going to externally rotate my, basically my ankles, you know, and my shins that way. And then also remember from the last lesson, tying it all together, a wider squat stance will activate more of the glutes than a closer squat stance. Closer squat stance, toes pointed forward, more quad dominant. So that's kind of a key those are all keys that you really want to take into account. Next thing to understand, when you take a squat and you take a lunge, right? Here's the craziest thing. We use squats and we use lunges as like the dominant player when we're talking about building glutes a lot of times. But people, when they do that, oftentimes they have underdeveloped glutes. Why is that the case? Glutes are activated at the highest extent near full extension, okay? So right now I'm seated. That is flexion, like my hips are in flexion. If I stand up, now my glutes are my hips are in extension. When are squats hardest? Everyone think about that right now. When are squats hardest? They're hardest on the bottom. Why do you think, I've said this before, why is it when guys load the bar up with a lot of weight, 90% of them are doing quarter squats? Because anyone can load the bar quarter squat and quarter squat. When you hit depth, it's hard. Squats are hardest when you're in full flexion. But glutes have the least amount of activation. So that's why squats aren't going to optimally build the glutes. But how do we fix that? We use what's called accommodating resistance, which is basically just bands, okay? So essentially is if we put bands on the bar, those bands get harder as I come up. So near full extension, the bands are at their hardest, greatest tension. Now the squats become more of a glute exercise. So if you're trying, and now same thing with lunges. Lunges are harder near the bottom, but it's easy near the top. So if I'm using banded resistance on lunges, I will also activate my glutes more. And that's actually, I think did we post that yesterday? Or we haven't posted that yet? Is that today? Today we'll post that at 7:30. Last topic of this week is when you're doing like basically when you're placing bands around your legs and you're talking about doing lateral movement, right? So like lateral band walks. One question we get is where is the best place to place the band to maximally activate the glutes? So you got the ankles and you have the knees. Research shows greater activation when you put the bands around the ankles. And the reason for that is mechanically, you're giving the bands relative to your glutes a greater mechanical advantage over your glutes. And that is going to make the exercise harder. So, lateral band walks, put the bands around your ankles as opposed to your knees. However, a real quick strategy is, say I go to failure on lateral band walks on my ankles, I could simply take those and I could slide it up on my knees and I may be able to continue the exercise because I've lowered the mechanical advantage of those bands relative to my glutes. So Actually, I said it the last time. There's one more we're gonna post. This is actually a really good week.
Glutes.
It's intent. Now, Ben Pekulski, a good friend of mine, is all about intent. I saw him at the Tampa Lightning game like last week. His kid was at the game. His kid's a huge fan. But Ben's all about intent. And intent's like focusing on like if you focus on the glutes, no matter what exercise you do, it's going to get actually more activation. There's lots of research on that. Dr. Brett Contreras, good friend of mine, actually demonstrated that in his glute lab. He showed that if you focus on the glutes, you get more activation in the glutes. But I'm also going to tell you another trick that goes along with that. Basically, a lot of guys or whatever, like they won't do isolation moves. Oh, I'm not going to do kickbacks, or oh, you're not going to catch me doing like reverse hypers and stuff like that, right? Because they're too manly, right? But here's the thing to understand, right? If you want to be strong, glutes are probably one of the most powerful things you can possibly do. If you want to be an athlete, glutes are probably the most important thing you can have, especially for speed, right? So it's not like, you really just need to, it's an important muscle, period, besides the aesthetics of it. So, but anyway, you got to change the culture on that. But the main thing that I think that we really have to understand is when you do isolation movements, basically, prior to like doing a compound movement, and when I mean isolation, I did kickbacks, and then I did squats afterwards. So research shows, the study we'll put up tomorrow showed more glute activation in the squats when you started off doing the isolation movement. So basically it actually kind of prepares the glutes from a neural standpoint to fire more when you do compound movements. So, that's pretty cool, right? So let's go ahead and summarize this all up. Number one that we talked about is squats and lunges aren't inherently the best exercise for glutes, but they can be turned into good glute exercises. How? One, remember, glutes are work best at the top of the movement. So what do we need to do? We need to put bands on to make the movement harder. That was number one. Number two, understand that when you're doing squats, externally rotating your feet out, a little bit wide, actually wider stance, externally rotating out, and doing what? Sitting back like you're sitting in a chair and thrusting forward as if you're doing a hip thruster or a glute bridge is going to be essential for that squat. If you're doing lunges, the primary mechanism lunges are making the glutes grow is because they cause muscle damage. You notice you're sore the next day. So what do we want to do with that? We want to make sure we have a longer step length, because that's going to actually cause more micro tearing, more damage, more growth factors, more growth in the glutes. And then we also said, and lastly, when you're doing bands, actually not lastly, but when you're doing bands, I always say that, but you put the bands on the ankles and that you'll activate more glutes. Maybe if you fail there, go ahead and put it up on the knees. And finally, mind-muscle connection. If you want the glutes, what is intent? You initiate the movement with the target muscle you're interested in. So with the glutes, if I'm interested in that, when I'm doing squats, the first thing I want to fire is the glutes. Finally, if I start off with an isolation exercise, it will actually result in more muscle activation when I go to a compound movement like a squat, like a lunge, like a leg press. Thank you guys. Let's get right into the questions. Okay. You guys want to hit them or you're unmuted?
I can ask you a few right off the bat.
Okay.
Are squats more responsive to higher reps or higher weight? And are they primarily fast or slow twitch?
So are squats more responsive to higher rep or higher weight, and they're primarily like fast twitch or slow twitch?
Are they primarily fast or slow twitch?
Oh, here's the thing. In muscle, when you're trying to build a muscle, there's several ways that muscles grow, and you really want to understand that. Like if I'm going heavy, I'm gonna activate muscle growth in a different way than if I was going lighter. Particularly, I'm gonna cause muscle growth in like the type 2 fast twitch fibers. But if I'm going to tap into like the type 1 fibers, if I'm also going to make the muscle fuller, like more muscle glycogen or carbohydrate stores, more fluid, like that full look that you get, you're going to want to go more of the higher repetitions. So if you want a combination of density as well as more of like fullness, you're going to do a combination of both. And so with squats, you're going to want to do both. For the glutes, remember they're 50% fast, 50% slow, so you want a combination of the two. Someone asked about deadlifts. And just really quickly to address that, deadlifts are primarily an extensor movement. Remember, the glutes are hip extensors. So deadlifts are an absolutely phenomenal activity for the glutes. Again, though, I would say that you got to create more of a mind-muscle connection, because if you think about people's form, sometimes people are just like bending over with their back. But remember, think about like that hip thruster movement. You're going to want to make sure that when you're deadlifting, that you're still thinking about the hip thrust if we're trying to target the glutes. But yeah, excellent. Okay, you guys want to answer me?
I got another one.
Okay.
Best exercise for gluteus medius. We kind of have already covered that.
Yeah, gluteus medius is kind of up there like the upper glutes. It's going to be primarily like more of a abductor, which again is like moving my leg out to the side. So all that lateral band movement that you're talking about, even external rotation on the squats, everything you do for the upper glutes is pretty much going to go ahead and translate to the gluteus medius. The machine, the adductor machine, again, that's going to be good. Someone says, this is an interesting question. I have no idea what this is. Hey doc, what do you think about weightlifting with electrical stimulation at the same time? Oh, interesting question.
Didn't Carlos do a study on that? They did squats with E-stem plus vibration.
But it seems like my CNS lose the capacity to contract my muscle. Okay, anyway, that was Giorgio. Giorgio, let me tell you something. Basically, we have something called 4U Fit, and it's actually exactly that. It's a suit you put over your whole body, and you can stimulate. So it's 4U Fit. Put a suit over your body. I could target your pecs if you're doing chest. I could target your quads if you're doing quads. Target your glutes if you're doing glutes. What I will say is this. If someone, remember when you first started training and you first started making gains, what was it like? I mean, I remember when I first started training, like I was sore all the time. Like, and I was benching like 50 pounds or something on a bar and struggling. But then the next week I was like benching like 70. And I was like, oh my God, at this rate, I looked at the big guy next to me, like at this rate, I'm gonna be big as you in like a year. And then of course reality sets in, right? Because gains start like this and then they slow. What causes gains? Do we still have a capacity, even highly trained, to tap into gains like we did when we were untrained? I think you can. And basically the answer to that becomes novel stimuli, new stimuli, something, I've joked about this, but the thing is I've done studies. If you force your muscle to be in two positions, die or hypertrophy, die or grow, it's gonna grow, or you just don't have any other capacity left. If you do electrical stimulation, again, like don't just do it. You need to be advanced. Combined with normal lifting, I honestly believe you would make gains to the same extent as when you were untrained. Now you'll adapt to that eventually, but you will be sore just like when you first started training. Because what happens when you're e-stimming a muscle, it's stimulated here, right? And so I'm like this, and I'm actually doing an eccentric contraction. That's still contracting. That's still contracting, and it's causing a lot of damage because you're getting a lot of micro tearing because this is basically contracting while I'm pulling into extension. See what I'm saying? Amazing gains. Working with professional bodybuilders, it's the first thing, if they're plateaued on a muscle, that I would do with them. Ben Pakulski does it. So, yes, if that's the question. Caitlin Marie says single leg stuff is good for the glute meats too. Stable. Oh yeah, good point, Caitlin. They are stabilizers. Thanks for adding that. What else we got? Because I missed a bunch of questions. I have to scroll up.
Okay.
Can you access the question?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Hey doc, this is Eric Olson. Hey doc, is there any benefit to hovering, not sitting down, at the hip abductor machines when targeting glutes? I see a lot of girls doing this, but never. When I say hovering,
So
demonstrate.
When you're at the hip abductor machine when you're sitting down.
You want to show them? I don't know. Yeah, show them.
Well, I can't see the legs.
Right.
Basically, a lot of people sit down and do the hip abductor machine.
Oh, got it.
But then you'll see a lot of people actually hovering upwards and doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
So. Oh, well, I mean, here's the concept. basically what the concept is that like when you're standing up. First off, anytime you're doing adduction, you're going to target the glutes, right? When you're near full extension, you tend to activate glutes more. And so I think that's why people are kind of doing the standing thing. What I'm also going to tell you is this, based on our research that we publish, and I think this is intuitive, changing things up provides novel stimuli. So, like if I do the same squat every single time, I will plateau. If I do the adductor machine the same way every time, I will plateau. So I applaud variation. So I mean, yeah, do it. Do both.
BFR for glutes.
Is it on there?
Oh, great question.
It's on there.
Great question. This is brilliant. Who asked that? Anthony? Anthony, great question. So, okay, remember, blood flow restriction basically is like, say I were to like wrap an ACE bandage or a Katsu device around my arm here, okay? So, for those of you who don't know blood flow, I wrap a device and actually partially restrict blood flow. When you wrap, you want to do about 6 or 7 out of 10, okay? Now, if I do bicep curls, right, I'm going to get like a lot of muscle growth when I do these curls, okay? Veins are going to be popping out all over my veins. Life will be good. But the thing to understand is this. What about my chest? I mean, if I'm restricting here, maybe I can hit my delts, but the blood flow restriction's here. So does my chest get activated? Same thing with the legs. If I wrap at the top of my legs, right, right up on the very top, right, on my legs, and I do squats, you're restricting down that way, which means that I'm going to hit my quads, I'm going to hit my hamstrings. But would you hit your glutes? Theoretically, you wouldn't think so, but guess what? You do. When you do blood flow restriction, even though you're not restricting the glutes, more muscle activation occurs in the glutes. And the great thing about it is, you don't have to lift as much weight. So if you're run down, like, I'm run down, but I got a show to prep for, and I really need to increase glute activation, but without taxing myself with heavier weight, wrap at the top of the limb. Do high reps on blood flow restriction. Like I would say, basically your repetition schema is like 30 reps, rest 30 seconds, 15 reps, rest 30 seconds, another 15 reps, and that should be it. And then maybe do the next exercise. You activate more, but you're like, wow. Turns out the nervous system's smart. It senses that your quads and your hamstrings are at a disadvantage because there's blood flow restriction, and nervous system says to circumvent that, I'm going to actually recruit more of the glutes during this activity, and that is why it works. Do it. Great question. Is it safe to drink Coke Zero every day? Yeah. Yeah, it's safe. We actually did a whole thing on that actually a couple weeks ago?
About a month and a half.
About a month and a half ago. Anyway, yeah, it's definitely safe.
You have to drink like 42 liters.
Yeah, you got to drink like 42 liters a day, 42 liters in one sitting of Coke Zero for that to be a problem. Great question. Ellingson, no, okay, next. All right, oh, yeah, that's too controversial. Ask me that one offline. David Rose. Paul's like, no.
Pump the brakes.
Paul's my PR guy. I can't answer that online.
All right, next question.
That was a joke. Paul just said that was a joke. David Rose goes HMB plus keto. Yes. Right? So we'll go ahead and take another one or two more questions.
Yeah,
Okay. What do you guys think?
Fats pre-workout.
Fats pre-workout. I mean, here's the issue. Like if I have fat pre-workout, it could hurt my stomach, and that's something I think that you kind of have to be careful with, right? You need to know your stomach. The other thing is, what's the purpose of having fat pre-workout? I'm assuming that you want energy, right? So if that's the goal, medium chain triglycerides will give you the most energy. I like the powdered medium chain triglycerides from like Quest Nutrition has really good powdered MCTs. So yeah, I think that's a good idea. Just make sure you know beforehand what you could tolerate. Okay, do you have a question or am I going to answer something else?
You got any over there?
Okay, Yosef asks, Hey doc, sorry, this isn't related. All right, well, it's the last question, so you got the floor, buddy. I've struggled with gaining quality weight recently, and so I decided to count my calories. In which, I'm not trying to see what he's saying. Give me a second. So, I had to, your question was long. I have been, Anyway, so basically we're just saying you're not gaining quality muscle, you're gaining fat. I found out how much protein I'm supposed to be taking. I think I'm about 6'5", 245 pounds, and it says I need 240 grams of protein a day. It says, I'm wondering how I can take that and not, okay, it looks to me like basically you're kind of more ectomorphic, right? So for you, if you're talking about 240 grams, meal frequency is probably a good idea for an ectomorph. So basically you're talking about spread that out throughout 5 or 6 meals every 2 to 3 hours, and you're gonna be good to go. Anything you want to add to that? As far as counting calories, although you're starting to gain fat, so that, yeah, here's the thing. It's very important to understand. I don't know enough history about you, okay? If you're saying you started to gain fat, if you've been bulking a long time, you're going to become insulin resistant. Never do linear bulking. In other words, I'm going to gain mass for 6 months. No, because pretty soon you're going to become insulin resistant, and that mass is going to be fat. So if you've been bulking for 3 months and you were gaining quality before and now you're not, could be an indication that you've been bulking too long. Back off, go to maintenance, up your cardio, increase your insulin sensitivity, then go back. I guarantee you'll start gaining mass again. If that's not the case and you just gain fat easily, a higher protein diet could be beneficial. You might even try 300 grams of protein a day because it's hard to store protein. You might make your carbs more moderate, not too high. That could be causing fat gain. And obviously, if you're having really high carbs and really high fat at the same time, that can also cause high fat gain. So, those are some things that I would definitely recommend to you. And no matter what, your training is going to be the #1 thing that you can do. So, if you're reassess your training. If you're just doing progressive increases in weight and load, that's not going to be enough anymore. Change up the exercise selection. Change up the repetitions. Change your training frequency. Do exercise you've never done before.